I can't believe the year is almost over. As I prepare for the Declutter Challenge that starts January 1st, it's time to take a look back at the roller coaster that was 2023. Join me as we dive into the good, the bad, and the ugly of this unforgettable year. So stick with me, and I'll show you how I did it. Hi, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please do me a favor and click that subscribe button. Before I start a new year, I like to sit down and take a moment to review the past one. And I'm always amazed at how different it always turns out than I intended it to be. And this year is no exception. My most watched video of 2023 was Quilt-As-You-Go Part 1. In fact, it had over 300,000 views, which is twice as much as number 2. This was actually a complex video to make, as not only did I have to make the Quilt-As-You-Go blocks, I had to make enough blocks in several different colors so that I could demonstrate the Quilt-As-You-Go technique to sew them all together. I was really quite exhausted by the time this video went live, and I kind of threw up my hands and said, no one's gonna like this. But it's often the case, if I think the video is going to tank, it almost always does well. And I did make another Quilt-As-You-Go video, number 2, using a scrappy braid block to show the strip and flip technique to sew the strips together. And if you missed either of these videos, I'll leave links to all of them in the video notes below. My video about the making of my ALENTEJANA quilt was the one that I had the most comments about. This was the quilt that I made during last year's Declutter Challenge. It's by Ships and Violins. I used remnants from another project, which meant that I did not have enough fabric in the right quantities. So it took some mental gymnastics to modify the cutting directions to use what I had. And the final quilting of it pushed my comfort zone. And now it's done. It's definitely on my top 10 list of favorite quilts. And I keep it really close to snuggle under when I need it. I'm still undecided on which project I will work during this year's Declutter Challenge. This year might be more about attacking my unfinished projects one by one. I love talking to other quilters and makers about quilting, and my podcast is where I get to explore other topics that I want to know more about. I have interviewed so many interesting people on this show, talking about their process and how they've applied their superpowers for good. This year, my most popular podcast was with Pamela Weeks, the curator of the New England Quilt Museum and the author of Portable Patchwork. Through her research, she has found all sorts of Quilt-As-You-Go techniques, and it was fascinating to hear how some of them come in and out of fashion. My number 2 podcast was with Deborah LOUIE of New South Wales, Australia, who likes to use all her stitches on her sewing machine. She inspired me to get out the embroidery threads and give it a go on my Bernina. I was also a guest on a couple of podcasts this year. In May, I had a lovely chat with Amanda and Wendy over on the Quilt Buzz podcast, talking about all things quilty. In December, I was on the Chad and Steve Have a Podcast show, talking about my YouTube channel and the challenges of making videos about quilting. My most popular Q&A was on February 7th. I'm going to put it down that we were all inside trying to stay warm. And I think we were also riding high from the Declutter Challenge. As always, there were plenty of good questions and lots of community in the chat. What to do with ugly fabric had another popular year. I made this video back in 2020, just at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns. As I was organizing my stash and handling fabrics I didn't like, and I thought to myself, I'm never going to use this. This is ugly. And that is where the idea for the video came from. Personally, I use this pattern at least once a year. It's a fast, easy way to use up your stash, even the ugly parts. Getting an honorable mention is my 8 at a time Mary's Triangles video. I guess this block was in a quilt along somewhere, so this 8 at a time method was handy to have. I made this video back in 2019 when a viewer asked me for a time-saving technique for this block. I really needed a puzzle at the time, so I dove in, and it took me about 2 days to come up with this method. And the fun thing was, at QuiltCon this year, I finally met the person who made that original request. My most popular short form video was measuring hack number 1. I used this to find the center of my walls so I could install my new felt tiles. And there's more measuring hacks where this came from in this video here. My Quilt-As-You-Go attempt on the long arm was definitely a misstep. The experiment was about finding an easier way to piece a panel quilt. And I thought maybe sewing the borders on the long arm would work. And yes, technically it did work, but it wasn't easy at all. I think in the end, it took a similar amount of time that it would have normally using the traditional piecing and quilting, but it definitely was very frustrating and awkward, and my results were less than perfect. And honestly, that's just the way it goes with some experiments. You just take what you learn back into your regular practice. And funny as usual, so much is forgiven once you get the binding on. My parents' home is inviting and cozy, and since COVID, it has become a favorite place for my kids to hang out. They make maple syrup, they forage fruit and vegetables, and they keep bees. It's also a great spot for Mando and the grand dogs to play. And often the visiting ends up happening outside around the campfire. So my goal this year was to make campfire quilts so that everyone can get snugly outside. And since I would use my scraps, no one would think that they were too precious to use. And I am very pleased with how they turned out. I had some other special events in my life this year. My daughter's wedding in May, meeting all my quilty friends at QuiltCon in February, and if you're not sick of hearing about it, my Hawaiian quilting cruise with Sissy and Ray in October. I learned how to use my embroidery module. I worked on improving my free motion quilting skills, and I got back to in-person meetings at my Quilt Guild. Unfortunately, not everything went to plan this year. In January, I had a couple of episodes of shooting pain in my jaw, and they became progressively worse until I was diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia in June. Now, I'm on medication that keeps the pain at bay. But there was an adjustment period as I got used to it. This was when I spent my time gathering up all my scrap blocks and sewing them together in fast and easy layouts. My most difficult video to make this year was by far my maple and eucalyptus video. Shortly after my cruise to Panama, my relationship with Angie Wilson devolved. So instead of this video being a celebration of what we created, it was a one-sided farewell. Breakups are hard under any circumstances, but it did give me an opportunity to re-examine my blessings, my personal priorities and values, and then take the time to do a reboot. And the year has ended on a high note. One of the top things on my bucket list was to enter a quilt into a quilt show. Now, Shape Salad is not my quilt, but I am proud to be part of the team that put it together. We are looking forward to seeing it hang at QuiltCon in Raleigh, North Carolina in February. With the remaining days of 2023, I will be trying to turn all those scrappy block flimsies I made during the summertime into finished quilts, so I can make a fresh start in 2024. Thank you all for being part of this incredible journey. As of today, I'm at 383,000 subscribers. And funny, over half the people that watch my channel are not even subscribed. So if you're one of those, please do me a big favor and click that subscribe button. I am hoping to reach 400,000 subscribers by Valentine's Day. Here's to new beginnings, fresh adventures, and embracing whatever 2024 brings. Take care, and I'll see you next time.